Chapter 10. The Mystic Maze. It had felt like hours since they had entered the cave. Jacob wasn't leading anymore. Instead, all three of them stood side by side, still staring at the earth to make sure no one fell over anything. The cave still felt incredibly uneasy and was still in a state of dead silence. Except every so often they would hear a drip of water descending down the damp cave stone walls. They also could not see the top of the cave anymore. The roof was so high up and it was out of eyeshot. Suggestions to stop had been made, but they had all agreed that it was best to get out of here as soon as possible, and it was now evident that all three of them wanted out of the cave. "This is horrible," said Jacob, sounding so loud that it gave the other two a jump. "I know," said Jack, glad he wasn't the only one terrified. Even Emma showed signs of fear. "Why did we agree to do this?" she asked. "Next time, I'm taking water over darkness any time." "Definitely," said Jacob. "Me too," said Jack. More silence followed them as the path they were on took a sharp right turn into more blackness. "I hate going around corners," said Jack. "Not that it makes any difference right now. I can only see 5 feet in front of me." "I know what you mean, though," said Jacob. "Not knowing what's around the corner is so daunting." "You know what else is daunting?" asked Emma. "What's that?" asked Jack. "When the path stoops down lower and lower. We must be so low underground by now." "We must be, yeah," said Jacob, looking up even though he very well knew it would not achieve nothing. "When the path backs up, I breathe a lot easier," she said. Walking through the dead air, Jack and Jacob suddenly found it very hard to fit next to each other side by side, for the path had become horrendously narrowed, forcing all three of them to walk single file. Jacob took the lead, Jack was in the middle, and Emma took up the rear. Minutes passed as the path stayed thin, but became twice as frightening. Jack looked around and saw something that made his heart stop. On the right side of them was a cliff, and a bottomless black cliff with no sign of a bottom. Without having to speak, the others noticed the sudden drop too, and were both frozen with fear. "Whoa!" said Jacob as he forced himself against the wall on his left side. "That wasn't there before, was it?" "No," said Emma, she too gluing herself to the stone. "That's come out of nowhere." "This reminds me of a dream I had," said Jack, looking down into the pit. "How did the dream end?" asked Jacob, who was now moving extra slowly. "I got woken up by my dad, so I don't really know." "Well, let's just imagine it ended with you getting out peacefully with nothing to hold you up." "Yes, let's do that," said Emma, not daring to look down. With every step they all took, tiny pebbles fell off the cliff into the bottomless pit, making them move at the speed of a snail. After what felt like a few more hours of utmost terror, the path became more spread and the cliffside had disappeared. They were able to walk next to each other again with no fear of falling off the side. But just as the fear of falling went away, a new fear made itself known to them all. They couldn't help but notice that the walls on both sides were becoming awfully close, resulting in a path to be narrowed again. Also, the cave ceiling came back into view. "Look!" Jack shouted, causing his voice to echo throughout the cave. "The ceiling's coming back. Can that mean anything for us?" "It can mean that the cave is condensing and soon we'll come face to face with a dead end," said Jacob, sounding blunt. "Anything else?" Jack asked pleadingly. "Just try not to think about it, Jack," said Emma. "I know it's hard now that you've seen it, but try not to think of it, okay? Think of other things. Think of how amazing the sun will feel on your face once you get out of here." Before Jack had time to think of this wondrous thought, Jacob shouted, "Look! I see something ahead." "It can't be anything threatening, otherwise you wouldn't have shouted it," said Emma. "Right?" Jacob hesitated before answering. He had clearly not thought about how loud he was being. "I don't think so," he said with a slightly quieter voice. "It's not moving, if that counts for anything." "Well, just be careful until we know what's up there," said Emma. Jack's heart was beating fast now. Was he about to face a creature of the dark? "What does it look like?" he asked. "A black rectangle shape standing," said Jacob, trembling almost. "Right," said Jacob, obviously trembling. "A standing black rectangle?" asked Emma, not trembling at all, nor whispering. "Shh!" both Jack and Jacob exclaimed. "Let me see," said Emma as she made her way to the front of the group. "Guys, it's a doorway." She sounded stunned. Really? Asked Jack, sounding more brave now. Yes, look, she said as she walked up to the opening and ran her hands on the walls. So, what's on the other side? Asked Jack, sounding apprehensive. Emma didn't answer for several moments, but instead walked through the archway, gazing all around with a faint look of awe in her eyes. What is it? Said Jacob slightly louder than necessary. Come look at this, she said excitedly. The two boys ran through the doorway and both immediately understood why she had been in awe. They had entered a kind of chamber in the cave, with more openings going off in every direction. Looking up, Jack counted 7 black towers of stone circling around them. In spite of how amazing it was to see such incredible sculptures, they were in a slight problem now. Jacob was the first to notice the dilemma. Which way do we go? He asked, sounding worried. Coming to grips with what he had just said, Jack too began worrying as to where they would go now. He also wanted to ask Emma about whether or not she could feel any sort of magic yet. He didn't know why, but he wasn't sure he wanted to bring the subject up with Jacob in earshot. He saw Jacob getting overly excited with the idea that Emma might be some special person and can feel magic, and he had a feeling that Jacob would not shut up about it. Jack thought maybe there was a way to ask her without properly asking her, maybe with an eye movement or gestures of some kind. Does anyone feel slightly more nervous than before? He asked, looking directly at Emma. Not uneasy, said Jacob, but definitely annoyed that we have so many to choose from. What about you, Emma? Asked Jack, hoping she would catch his hint. To help encourage Emma to catch on, Jack widened his eyes and started waving his hands at the towers. Emma's eyebrows narrowed for a few moments, but then relaxed and her eyes closed. She had caught on. Emma began walking from tower to tower, staring down at each opening for 30 seconds at a time before coming to a conclusion that made Jack's excitement deflate. No, I don't feel anything different either. But I do think there's no point in hanging around much longer. We just need to pick a path and go down it. Otherwise, we'll be here forever. I think this one, said Jacob, pointing at the path facing northeast. From what I can see, there's nothing haunting down there. It looks exactly the same as the others, said Jack, taking a look down the dark path. Exactly, so there's no reason why it can't be this one. Yeah, I guess you're right, said Emma. They all do look the same. Let's go. And with a deep breath, the 3 of them, all in single file, headed into another black-infested opening. It had seemed that choosing the northeast path had so far been a good idea. For starters, there were no jagged rocks protruding out of the walls or ground, and the path itself had started to slope upwards ever so slightly, which gave them all high spirits that they were headed for the way out. However, it wasn't much long after that maybe this path was not the wisest. It stooped up, giving them hope, but as they walked on, several other paths were breaking off side by side and going in every direction, which made Jack feel very uncomfortable. I don't like this, he said quietly. Yeah, I don't either, said Jacob. The other walkways creep me out. Keep making me think we're going the wrong way. We're not going back, said Emma quickly. If we did that, it would be completely pointless. Like we said, they all look the same, so this one is no better than the rest. Fair point, said Jacob. So they carried on, hoping for some sign that they were on the correct way, but instead they found themselves with the complete opposite, a dead end. With shouts of frustration, they backtracked and agreed to take the first opening they came across, whichever way it went. The first opener they found went left, and they entered the new path without stopping. The walls were so high, and the roof again had vanished, giving them the feeling of being very enclosed. Just like the first walkway, paths were protruding off this way, and which made everyone feel even more terrified. Do we take another path before this one runs out too? Asked Jacob. I think we should, said Jack. Coming to a dead end feels like a defeat in some way. I agree. Although, I think I know what this means, said Emma. It's a maze of cave tunnels. We're going to be in here for days if we can't find our way out. This comment did not ease Jack or Jacob at all. I think the next one that goes left, and then how about a right? Whatever works, says Jacob. I don't mind. All right, said Jack. In more silence, they trudged on through the dark cave, praying that something would show them the way, that they were doing right. But in that exact moment, something did happen, but it didn't make Jack feel any better. There was a distant thump coming from somewhere nearby, followed by several more thumps. Jack swallowed. "Did you hear that?" Jacob asked as he looked back at them. The looks on Jack's and Emma's faces told Jacob their answers. Panic had struck them both. It was a sound that they were dreading to hear. More thumps and rumbles could be heard throughout the cold cave, until suddenly a loud roar came out of the dark, making all three of them freeze. "What do we do?" asked Jacob as quietly as possible. "We have to go on," said Emma. "We've come too far to go back. Come on." "Wait," said Jack in a loud whisper. "Listen to the thumps." All three of them looked out into the darkness and listened to the darkness. "They're footsteps. Big footsteps." "You're right, Jack," said Emma, now drawing her sword. "Let's go." Jack and Jacob took out their axes, and as quickly and quietly as they could, they carried on through the stone pathways, hoping that the sounds would stay distant, but instead it sounded as though they were growing closer and closer to the thumps and roars. "It sounds like there's more than one," said Jack, realizing the roars sounded slightly different each time. Emma was leading them through this half of the journey, which the boys had no problem with. Just when it seemed like the sounds could not be closer, there was a humongous thump, which made everyone lose their balance and fall to the ground, causing Jack's fire to go out. It was scary how much light was lost due to one small flame going out. "Jack!" shouted Jacob in an audible whisper. "Stay close to me, don't get lost." "Thanks," said Jack, panting. "Emma, are you okay?" Yeah, I'm okay," she said as she got to her feet. "But something doesn't feel right." "Do you think so?" asked Jacob mockingly. "Maybe it's the fact that we're in a dark maze trying to keep away from the monsters which seem only around the corner?" "No," she said exasperatedly. "Something in the air feels different. Before it was still terrifying, but the air didn't feel thick or anything, did it?" Jack looked at Emma with wide eyes. "She was doing it. She was feeling the magic again." "Not that I remember," said Jack, trying not to sound excited. "But to be honest, I don't feel anything different now." "Yeah, I don't think I do either," said Jacob, sounding concerned. "What do you mean when you—" "We have to get out now," said Emma quietly and abruptly. "We have to go before—" A deafening roar came from what sounded as though it was just feet from them. Before any of them had time to think what to do, it was too late. An enormous, pale troll standing at 15 feet at least was booming towards them with what looked like a long, heavy rock in its left hand. His legs were the size of tree trunks, his body the size of a small cart, his arms the length of Jack himself, and his head was the size of Mrs. Thorland's biggest cooking pot. Without thinking, Jack, Jacob, and Emma ran back the way they came in some hope of outrunning the troll, but to every one step the troll took, they were taking at least 5. "Here!" shouted Jacob as he darted down the first path that came into sight. The other two followed him and kept him sprinting down, only to find another giant troll coming towards them from the other end of the stone path. They were trapped. One troll behind them with its club raised, the other one in front of them waving its arms, frantically snarling down at them. Closer and closer the trolls came to them. Jacob and Emma stood back to back with Jack in the middle, waiting for the trolls to become close enough to start fighting. But instead of fighting, just as the two trolls were coming back at an incredible speed and were so big, the two trolls collided by smashing their heads together and both falling backwards. The ground shook as they fell, and they continued to roar powerfully. "Quick!" shouted Emma. "Let's go, now!" Not waiting to see if the trolls were dead or simply unconscious, the three of them sped down the narrow path. More roars could be heard all around them now, and it was clear that the sound of the struggle had alerted the other trolls. Thumps became more clear and sounded closer than ever. Darting down another path as to avoid more trouble, Jack, Jacob, and Emma stopped quickly and to catch their breath. "Everyone okay?" asked Emma, sounding out of breath. Jacob didn't speak, but gave a thumbs-up sign to show that he was all right as he continued heaving loudly, and Jack, too, puffing, nodded. "We need to keep moving. Come on," she said as she started to run into the dark. Jack and Jacob followed her, with his heart beating fast and sweat pouring off his face. Jack was praying with all his might that they would not run into another troll, but the sound of another roar stopped him thinking anything of the sort. "This way!" Emma shouted at them. The path had come to a T shape. Emma had decided to take the right one, but had immediately come running back and took the path going left, followed by another troll chasing her from behind. Jacob and Jack started running around as fast as they could in order to catch up with Emma and the troll. Snarling at the top of its voice, the troll went to swing its arm at Emma but narrowly missed. "Hey!" shouted Jacob at the troll, hoping to distract it for a split second, but the troll showed no sign that it knew Jack and Jacob were there. Just then, Emma stopped running dead in her tracks and began running back towards the two boys. Being too quick for the troll, it lost its balance and fell to the stone floor. Shaking the ground again slightly, but managed to regain control and began chasing all three of them back in the opposite direction. "Legs!" Jack shouted as he suddenly had an idea. "Attack its legs! That way it can't run!" "Brilliant!" shouted Jacob back to him. They all stopped running face to face the approaching troll with weapons raised. Emma with her long shiny sword, Jacob with his sharp axe, and Jack with his small wood-cutting axe. "Wait until I say go!" shouted Jack as they all stood next to each other facing what looked like their dooms. "Hold! Hold! Hold! Now!" he yelled. Just as the troll was passing over them, all three of them sliced, slit, and hacked away at the beast's legs. It began screaming in pain, and as it fell to its knees, but still swinging its arms around like mad. Blood was splattering everywhere. Jack could feel the troll's blood dripping down onto his face, but it did not stop. Emma's face was also splotched with the beast's blood, and just like the dragon, she began climbing up the troll's torso, making her way to the head, while the others hacked away at whatever part of the troll they could. Still howling in pain, the troll tried to get Emma off of it, but she was too quick for it. Stabbing her sword into the troll's chest each time she got higher and higher made it only act more violently and frantically, until eventually the mad cries became quieter until they were finally faded and the troll laid face down in the stone and moved no more. Jack, Jacob, and Emma all came in together, looking down at the dead troll. "Here," Emma said softly, holding her flame towards him so he could take it. Jack took it and watched Emma as she got down to her knees and started examining the troll. "Look at that," she said, pointing at a mark imprinted on the back of the troll's left shoulder. "Have you seen that before?" Jack and Jacob both came in closer to examine the mark. It looked like the letter A, but very badly done. "What is that?" asked Jack, looking confused. "I've never seen that before," said Jacob, looking even more confused than Jack did. "Yeah, I don't know what it is either, but it looks as though it was carved into it," said Emma, running her fingers along the carving. "Nice," said Jacob sarcastically. "We need to get moving. It's quiet now, and if I'm honest, that's more scary than the thumps." "Yeah, let's get moving before anything else happens down here." Jack, Jacob, and Emma all wiped their faces as best they could, put their weapons away, and carried on down the path. Now that they had interactions with trolls, they were able to take in the path that they were on. It was indeed gradually sloping up again, and there were still paths going off this one left and right, but they thought best to stay on this one. All had seemed to calm down for the moment until Jacob, who was walking in the back of the group, noticed something glimmering down one of the dark passages off to the right. "Hey guys," he said questioningly, "have a look at this." The other two came to see what Jacob had seen, and Jack saw the same glittering light that had caught his eye. "What is that?" he asked, squinting his eyes, trying to see better. "If they're what I think they are," said Jacob, running into the shining pile. "Yes, they are. Guys, they're weapons." "What?" asked Emma, shocked. "Weapons! Come and have a look. There's heaps of them." Jack and Emma both walked into the passage and saw with their own eyes a pile of swords, shields, helmets, arrows, and all sorts. "They must be weapons from past warriors who sadly got taken by the trolls," said Emma, picking up a neat bow and arrow. "They must be where they dumped their things." "I'm sorry they got caught," said Jacob, "but then again, I'm happy these are here." Emma looked darkly at Jacob as he was eyeing up a particularly large axe, which still looked sharp. Jack too came down to have a closer look and feel of some weapons. After what he had just been through, he thought his little pickaxe might not be able to handle much more before it broke. He was scanning the hoard when he noticed a long silver sword handle sticking out of the pile. He pushed the others off and he pulled it out. Instantly, he knew he liked this sword. It had a great grip, fitted perfectly around his hands, and like Jacob's new axe, was still perfectly sharp. That looks good on you, said Emma, sounding impressed. Do you think so? He asked, sounding slightly embarrassed. She's right, Jack, said Jacob. Suits you well. What do you think of this? I might take this one. He stood up and held the axe as though as in the front line of a war. Well, how does it feel? Asked Jack. It feels great, he said, smiling. It's not too big for me, and it's not too heavy to carry with me. He stood back and gave a great swing. Then that's all that matters, said Jack, laughing. If it feels good, then great, no matter how it looks. Yeah, I guess you're right, said Jacob, smiling to himself. How about you, Emma? You see anything you like? Well, of course, but I don't feel right taking them, she said, as she kept eyeing up the bow and arrow. I know it seems wrong, began Jacob, but think of it this way. We were fortunate enough to get past the trolls. It's a shame that these guys didn't, but think of it as a kind of way of passing on their weapons to us. We'd be putting them to good use, and they would be of great help to us. How many more daggers do you think you could take with the sword you have now? Trust me, you'd be silly to not take them. You'd be avenging the ones who fell. He grabbed her shoulder. You're right, she said, looking up. It'll be doing them a favour by bringing the swords and things back into battle. Who knows how long they've been down here? Cool, said Jack, happy that she wasn't against taking them. What are you going to go for? I think I'll keep the sword that I have now and use it until it breaks. But I'm going to take this bow and arrow. It's so smooth, and it's so light. Plus, I like the look of this little dagger. The way it bends like that. It's not too much, is it? She said the last sentence, looking up as if she wanted Jack's approval. In order to keep Emma happy, he went along with it. No, of course it's not too much. They both look great on you. Smiling and happy with their choices, the three of them headed back out the passage and continued down the main path, hoping that for some form of daylight would show itself sooner rather than later.